you can say about somebody. but I just want to point out, people have been paying attention. One of the questions is, is any of this going to matter? No,
let me just interrupt you for 1 second, John. He's done, and he did not take questions.
What?
So I want, right. So let's just say, I just want everyone to understand, our anticipation, and Trump's going to do what he's going to do, but our anticipation was that this would be about an hour and he might take questions. So it was 40 minutes and he took no questions. That's actually interesting, John. It's unlike him.
It's a set piece. He went out there, he said what he wanted to say. We'll let people decide whether or not it was effective, what he said there, and he's leaving, and he doesn't want to be questioned on it. And just the one point I was going to make is whether people are paying attention or not. Harry Etten points out that in the hour after the verdict, Google searches for Trump were up 3,200%. 3,200% in that hour. So this is a moment where what you say
matters. They raised $35 million in those hours.
Yeah. But the fact that he didn't take questions, I mean, Abby, we were both at the White House. Then President Trump would come out any day to answer questions about anything. So the fact that he's not willing to take questions, follow-ups about what he said about this case, that's surprising and suggests that maybe he doesn't have a lot of answers.
No, I mean, it is very unlike him, extremely unlike him. And Wolf, let me just pass it back to you.
Aaron, thanks very much. I did the checking. He spoke for about 33, 34 minutes, maybe a little bit more than a half an hour. They were billing it could go on for an hour, and that they called it a news conference. And just to be precise, a news conference is when reporters are allowed to ask questions following an opening statement. No questions were allowed to be asked. He didn't answer any questions. So it really wasn't a news conference. It was simply a statement or a speech by Donald Trump. And it was interesting, David Chalian, he started as if it was a campaign speech going after Biden and the immigration issue, the economic issues. He wasn't talking, at least at the beginning, about the case.
Yeah, I actually thought when, other than that opening line of this could happen to you if it happened to me kind of thing, and then he went right into the immigration piece, and I thought, he's going to use this opportunity to pivot now from the courtroom to the pivot's such a dangerous word with Donald Trump, I realize, but to move from the courtroom to the campaign trail in a substantial way. And that's not at all what happened. What happened was a venting session for the defendant in this case, who's now a convicted felon 34 times over, to just air all the ramblings through his mind about his grievances from this case. And we've heard pieces of it every day when he would go before the cameras in the courthouse. You can string together where these grievances are at each step of this case. But instead of using this to do that, to make the case on immigration, on inflation, on crime, on these issues that are top of mind issues for American voters, he chose not to do that. He chose actually to step into the Biden campaign frame of Donald Trump's candidacy. They say time and again, Mitch Landrieu said it on our air this morning, their argument is Donald Trump is making this 2024 campaign all about him and not about you. And that is precisely what he did at this rambling, I don't even know what to call it, just this venting session before cameras.
Yeah, he opened with a very, very blistering attack against President Biden, basically suggesting he's the worst president in the history of the United States. He can't speak. He can't put two sentences together. He was going on and on about the Democratic president of the United States.
Yeah, and then he went on for 45 minutes to show that he can't really speak or put two sentences together. It was, I think, surprisingly incoherent, surprisingly all over the place. He wants to make this argument about age against Biden, but here he was looking, kind of like an old man who was just ranting and raving in a self-involved way, to your point, David Chalian, and to the campaign's point as well. And so, again, this wasn't a great outing for him. I think it was probably smart of him not to answer questions, given where he has been so far in this speech. And if you look at the times he has answered questions, he gets himself in trouble on any number of issues. You think about the Time magazine, that cover story, he sounded terrible there in terms of issues around the Department of Justice, around abortion as well. And so, listen, we're probably going to hear more of campaign Trump. And if this is a preview of it, I think the Biden team probably feels pretty good.
I also think the fact that he didn't take questions is sort of telling in terms of his state of mind, because It actually is typically something, certainly during the Trump administration, that he thrived on, right? He loves the back and forth with reporters. I guarantee you he looked out and saw faces in that crowd that he knew personally, and any of us who've ever been in those crowds, I would do it quite a bit. I mean, he would come up when I was the Capitol Hill correspondent. I had covered the campaign, and he would find you and point to you. That is him in his element, and the fact that he decided that he was going to do what he did and then walk away, I actually find to be a telling reality. And I think, again, it's telling. His advisors, the campaign, wants to keep him on a teleprompter. They see the polls. They know he could win this race. And the key to winning this race is to prevent a reminder to Americans of the chaos that a lot of people felt in the Trump administration. And quite frankly, this event was a reminder.
Yeah. And the telling piece of not taking questions also, because I totally agree with your assessment of that, is he uses that back and forth reporters, or has, to shape the narrative. And he's so skilled at that. That's actually like one of Trump's real superpowers as a political persona on the stage for now a decade in American politics nearly. And he uses that back and forth reporters when he wants to strategically shape a narrative. And he clearly didn't have that. He wants to just air his grievances. That's what his goal was today. He wasn't trying to get a narrative about his campaign and the strong position that he's in this campaign solidified in people's minds. That's not what he chose to do.
And it's not clear that he can still do that, right? I mean, I think part of it, are we seeing, that Trump isn't the Trump of 2015, 2016, and of the presidency. And listen, everyone ages. He even mentioned this, right? In his speech there, he said, I'm 77, but I don't really feel 77, which is exactly what people who are 77 say, right?
One question for the lawyers at the table, too. Because what I see in the political decisions that were just on display there was someone who's not listening to those around him who say, we know what you should do here. And it does seem like there's some criticism in the wake of this, just across the board guilty verdict, of the way his defense team operated, perhaps because they were being forced to listen to him?
Well, I saw a parallel of his option decision not to take questions just now, similar to what he did on the stand. He did not testify. Donald Trump has been known as his own best spokesperson. He, from the get-go, managed expectations among the American public to suggest that even Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. Mother Teresa would not have been charged with these allegations, by the way. But it wouldn't have happened. And if it did, I'm sure she could probably beat him. But you think about his decision not to actually testify in the trial as well, because for the very reasons, likely, politically speaking, he said that he would not be able to win. So one would say it would not have been a fool's errand to get his narrative out there, knowing how much it would have been covered, et cetera. He chose not to for whatever his own personal reasons. And defense counsel last night, speaking to Caitlin Collins, Todd Blanche, said that he has never told a client not to testify, but they had made decisions together about why he likely should not in this instance. And yet again, even without the framing of a prosecution team going after him for how many hours it would have been, he still chose not to do so. You could look at this as him saying the narrative or the defense he could raise in the court of public opinion otherwise is not plausible.
Ellie, when he said, I would have loved to have testified, I wanted to testify, but he then gave this excuse, and let's talk a little bit about that. The excuse was the judge would have allowed them to go into everything I have ever been involved in.
Inaccurate, incorrect. Of course, Donald Trump, like any